During the 1930s, survival was not a metaphor for black families in America. It was a daily calculation made in kitchens with empty shelves, broken jobs, and no safety net. While the Great Depression crushed the nation, black communities faced hunger with fewer wages, fewer options, and fewer protections. The meals they cooked were not chosen for comfort or tradition alone. They were chosen because they could keep children alive one more night. This video uncovers 10 cheap dishes black ancestors relied on when money disappeared and dignity was all they had left. These foods were built from cornmeal, beans, scraps, and patience. Every pot told a story of endurance, creativity, and quiet resistance. Understanding these meals explains how families survived systems designed to fail them. Stay with this video, because each dish reveals how survival was cooked, served, and passed down without being written. This history still matters today. When money vanished in the 1930s, cornmeal mush became a last defense against hunger in many black households. This dish required almost nothing: ground corn, water, salt, and time. Cornmeal was cheap, shelf-stable, and widely available, especially in southern communities shut out of steady wages. When cupboards were bare, a pot of mush could still be made before sunrise. Cornmeal mush was boiled slowly until thick, then eaten hot, sliced cold, or fried the next day. It stretched across meals because leftovers never went to waste. A single pot fed children before school, workers before labor, and elders at night. Sometimes it was eaten plain. Sometimes it was paired with molasses, sorghum, or a spoon of fatback grease. Flavor depended on what survived the week. This dish mattered because it asked for patience instead of money. It taught families how to endure hunger without surrendering routine. Sitting down to eat, even something simple, preserved order in homes shaped by instability. Parents could still say dinner was ready. Children could still learn the rhythm of a shared meal. Cornmeal mush also carried memory. It connected black families to earlier generations who cooked the same food under slavery and Reconstruction. Knowledge passed quietly from hand to hand, without paper or measurements. Survival lived in muscle memory. By the late 20th century, cornmeal mush faded from daily tables, replaced by packaged foods and faster meals. But during the 1930s, it stood as proof that survival did not require abundance. It required resolve, restraint, and the will to keep cooking when nothing else remained. Remembering this dish honors the quiet strength that filled empty stomachs and carried families forward, meal by meal, through years designed to break them, yet never succeeded because survival was practiced daily, patiently, and without witnesses in forgotten kitchens. In the 1930s, beans and rice were not a side dish in black households. They were survival made edible. When wages collapsed and food prices still demanded cash, dried beans and sacks of rice offered something rare: certainty. They were cheap, filling, and forgiving. A family could survive a week on one pot if it had to. Beans were soaked overnight to stretch fuel and soften hunger. Rice was boiled plain, sometimes cooked in the same pot to save time and firewood. Meat was optional and often absent. When available, a scrap of salt pork or fatback flavored the entire meal. When it was not, salt and patience did the work. This dish mattered because it respected limits. It did not demand ovens, refrigeration, or exact timing. It welcomed leftovers and improved with age. A pot cooked on Sunday could feed a family until Wednesday. Each reheating deepened flavor and meaning. Beans and rice also carried quiet structure into unstable homes. Meals still happened at regular hours. Bowls were still filled evenly. Parents still served children first. These habits preserved dignity during years designed to strip it away. Across the South and urban neighborhoods alike, this combination crossed regional lines. It traveled with migration, adapting to what was available, but never losing purpose. It was nourishment that asked nothing in return. Today, beans and rice appear on menus as comfort food. In the 1930s, they were something else entirely. They were a promise that hunger could be delayed, that strength could be rebuilt overnight, and that survival did not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it sat quietly in a chipped bowl, steaming, dependable, and enough to carry another day forward when tomorrow offered no guarantees at all. That reliability kept families standing when everything else collapsed around them daily together. During the 1930s, hoe cakes were a quiet answer to hunger in many black households. This simple cornmeal bread required no oven, no yeast, and almost no expense. When flour was scarce and store bread was a luxury, hoe cakes could still be made with cornmeal, water, salt, and a little grease. That was enough. Hoe cakes were mixed quickly and cooked on cast iron skillets or flat griddles, often over open fires. The name came from earlier generations who cooked the batter on the blades of field tools while working long days. By the Great Depression, the method remained because it worked. A hot surface and patience turned thin batter into filling bread. This dish mattered because it could be made anywhere. It fed families in rural cabins, city rooms, and tenant farms alike. Hoe cakes were eaten plain when nothing else existed. When available, they were dipped into pot liquor, grease, or syrup saved for special days. Each cake stretched the meal without stretching the budget. Hoe cakes also carried familiarity during unstable times. The smell of cornmeal cooking meant food was coming. That certainty calmed children and steadied households shaped by uncertainty. Eating together, even briefly, preserved normalcy. Like many survival foods, hoe cakes carried history deeper than the Depression. They connected families to ancestors who survived slavery, sharecropping, and displacement using the same method. Knowledge passed without instruction, shaped by repetition and need. Today, hoe cakes appear as heritage food or restaurant sides. In the 1930s, they were neither nostalgic nor optional. They were essential. Remembering hoe cakes means remembering the skill of making something sustaining from almost nothing. It honors the hands that kept families fed with fire, iron, and resolve when the world offered no help at all. In the 1930s, greens cooked with fatback were not a tradition meal. They were survival on a plate for many black families. Leafy greens could be grown, foraged, or traded even when money failed. Fatback, one of the cheapest cuts of pork, provided the flavor and calories needed to turn plants into strength. Greens were washed carefully, chopped slowly, and simmered for hours. Tough leaves softened. Bitter edges faded. A small piece of fatback melted into the pot, seasoning everything without waste. Nothing was discarded. Even the cooking liquid, known as pot liquor, was saved and poured over bread or hoe cakes to stretch the meal further. This dish mattered because it transformed scarcity into nourishment. It used what the land could still offer when stores could not. Greens grew back. Fatback lasted. Together, they created food that filled stomachs and rebuilt bodies worn down by labor and stress. Greens and fatback also reinforced patience. The long cooking time demanded planning and attention. Meals were prepared with intention, not speed. That rhythm anchored households during years when work disappeared and stability followed no rules. The pot itself became a symbol. It stayed on the stove all day, feeding whoever came through the door. Children learned early that survival required care, not excess. Elders passed down knowledge without speaking it aloud. By the time prosperity returned, many families left this dish behind, chasing convenience and distance from hardship. Yet during the 1930s, greens and fatback carried families through hunger quietly. Remembering this meal honors the discipline, restraint, and wisdom that turned humble leaves into survival, one simmering pot at a time. They fed generations without praise, cameras, or recipes, proving that endurance often lived in ordinary kitchens where survival was practiced daily, shared evenly, and never announced itself to the outside world. During the 1930s, gravy poured over bread kept many black families alive when meals had no center. This dish was not planned. It happened when ingredients ran out but hunger did not. A little flour, water, salt, and grease could still become food when nothing else remained. Gravy was made from whatever fat existed. Drippings from fatback, salt pork, or even saved grease were heated slowly. Flour was stirred in carefully to avoid waste. Water stretched the mixture into something pourable. The result was thin, but it was warm, filling, and dependable. Bread, often stale or homemade, gave the gravy purpose. This meal mattered because it created fullness without abundance. It allowed parents to divide food evenly and keep children quiet through long evenings. A pan of gravy could feed many mouths if shared patiently. Nothing was thrown away. Even crumbs were used. Gravy and bread also preserved dignity. Families still sat down to eat. Plates were still passed. Routine survived even when choice disappeared. That order mattered in homes where jobs vanished and futures felt uncertain. This dish carried older knowledge. It came from generations who understood how to survive on scraps under slavery and sharecropping. Skills were inherited through repetition, not instruction. Children learned by watching hands move across stoves. By the time better food returned, many families stopped speaking about meals like this. They represented years people wanted to forget. Yet during the Great Depression, gravy and bread stood between hunger and survival. Remembering this dish honors the quiet intelligence that turned leftovers into nourishment. It recognizes the strength required to feed a family without complaint or excess. Survival did not always arrive as a full meal. Sometimes it arrived as a thin ladle of gravy shared carefully, proving that staying alive often depended on knowledge passed down without words, cooked in silence, and eaten with resolve at worn tables across America. During the 1930s, penny stew was a lifeline for many black families struggling to survive. It was not a recipe found in cookbooks. It was an improvisation born from scarcity, built from what little could be gathered or afforded. A handful of beans, a few root vegetables, and a small scrap of meat could fill a pot and feed a family. Every ingredient mattered. Nothing could be wasted. The stew began with soaking beans overnight, softening them for long cooking. Vegetables such as onions, carrots, or turnips were peeled and chopped with care. Any small piece of meat, salt pork, ham hock, or even chicken bones, was rendered for fat and flavor. Water filled the pot, slowly turning humble scraps into a simmering meal. The stew thickened over hours, its aroma carrying through small homes, signaling that hunger could wait another night. This dish mattered because it provided sustenance without choice. It fed children before school, laborers before long workdays, and elders who had endured the harshest realities of poverty and discrimination. Penny stew also preserved dignity. Sitting down to a warm bowl allowed families to maintain routine, share conversation, and feel that life was still under their hands, even when the world outside offered no certainty. Penny stew also carried history. Recipes varied by region, family, and availability, yet each pot reflected the creativity and resilience passed down from ancestors who had survived slavery, Reconstruction, and economic hardship. Knowledge was not written. It was remembered in taste, smell, and method. By the late 20th century, penny stew had nearly disappeared from daily tables, replaced by packaged or convenience foods. Yet during the Depression, it stood as a testament to ingenuity. Remembering penny stew honors those who turned almost nothing into nourishment. It reminds us that survival depended not on abundance, but on patience, skill, and a quiet determination that kept families fed day after day, even when hope seemed scarce. During the 1930s, fried okra was a dish that many black families relied upon when resources were scarce. It was inexpensive, accessible, and could be grown in small garden plots or purchased cheaply at local markets. Okra required minimal preparation but offered sustenance and flavor that could stretch across meals when other vegetables were unavailable. Preparation began with washing and slicing the pods, then dredging them lightly in cornmeal or flour. A small amount of grease or fatback heated in a skillet turned the slices golden and crisp. The result was filling, portable, and satisfying. When combined with bread or leftover rice, fried okra became a meal capable of feeding multiple mouths without demanding expensive ingredients. This dish mattered because it provided both nutrition and consistency. Children learned the rhythm of mealtime through a pan that could feed them quickly. Parents could plan around it, knowing that hunger would be delayed even when money was gone. Leftovers could be reheated or eaten cold, stretching scarce resources further. Fried okra also carried generational knowledge. Recipes varied by household and region, but the method, timing, and care were passed from elders to children. Cooking okra became a lesson in patience, observation, and the importance of making every ingredient count. By the mid-20th century, fried okra was often relegated to sides in restaurants, losing some of its survival significance. Yet in the 1930s, it was vital. Remembering fried okra honors the resourcefulness of Black families who transformed humble garden vegetables into sustaining meals. It demonstrates that survival depended not on abundance, but on the careful combination of what was available, prepared thoughtfully, and shared without waste. This dish is proof that even the simplest foods carried stories of endurance, patience, and quiet strength through one of the most challenging decades in American history. During the 1930s, hominy stew was a dish that many Black families turned to when resources were scarce. Hominy, made from dried corn kernels treated with lye or lime, was inexpensive, filling, and available in bulk. It provided a base that could stretch small amounts of meat or vegetables into meals capable of feeding entire households. Preparation required patience and care. Hominy was soaked, simmered, and sometimes combined with beans, onions, or root vegetables. Small pieces of pork, salt meat, or scraps from the Sunday roast added flavor and protein. The stew was cooked slowly, allowing the flavors to meld and the kernels to soften. Every bit of liquid and every scrap of meat was used to ensure nothing went to waste. This dish mattered because it turned scarcity into sustenance. A single pot could serve several meals across days. Children learned how to wait for food, and parents could manage hunger with minimal ingredients. The act of preparing the stew preserved routine and stability in homes where uncertainty dominated daily life. Hominy stew also carried cultural and historical knowledge. Recipes varied by family and region, yet each reflected techniques passed down from generations who survived slavery, sharecropping, and systemic deprivation. Cooking was a form of memory and resilience, transmitted quietly from elders to younger generations. By later decades, hominy stew became less common, replaced by processed foods and modern convenience. During the Great Depression, however, it was essential. Remembering this dish honors the ingenuity of Black families who transformed humble ingredients into nourishing meals. It is a testament to endurance, careful planning, and the quiet strength that sustained families through the harshest conditions, one simmering pot at a time. During the 1930s, cornmeal mush became a crucial survival food for many Black families facing the harsh realities of the Great Depression. When cupboards were nearly empty and wages were scarce, a simple pot of cornmeal, water, and salt could feed an entire household. It required almost nothing, yet provided warmth, fullness, and sustenance when other options had vanished. Preparation was deliberate. Cornmeal was stirred into boiling water until it thickened into a porridge-like consistency. Sometimes it was eaten immediately while hot, other times it was cooled, sliced, and fried the next day. Even small scraps of fat or molasses could transform it into a richer, more satisfying meal. Nothing was wasted, and every portion was stretched to its limit. This dish mattered because it taught families resourcefulness. Children learned the value of patience as the mush slowly thickened, and parents learned how to feed many mouths with very little. Cornmeal mush was more than food. It was a practice of endurance, discipline, and careful planning that preserved both body and dignity in uncertain times. Cornmeal mush also carried a historical connection. It linked families to ancestors who survived slavery and Reconstruction, passing down techniques and memory without written recipes. Knowledge of how to cook, serve, and stretch cornmeal was shared quietly, yet it ensured survival through each long day. By the late 20th century, cornmeal mush had largely disappeared from daily tables, replaced by convenience foods. Yet during the 1930s, it was indispensable. Remembering cornmeal mush honors the quiet strength and creativity that turns simple ingredients into life-sustaining meals. It reminds us that survival depended not on abundance, but on skill, patience, and the will to keep cooking, feeding, and enduring one humble pot at a time.